Hiya, Bodcasters, it's Rich here. We're bringing you another repost today while we're getting ready for both our charity walk in aid of Andy's Man Club that's taking place at the end of May and for Season 7, which will be coming to you very early on in June. Today we're bringing you our chat from last year with Caralyn Dreyer. We spoke to Caralyn about her experiences with mental health, identity, and finding her voice through her blog. This was a great conversation and we hope you enjoy listening again.
It's the Middle-aged Bodcast. Getting older, but having some laughs.
Welcome to the Middle-aged Bodcast with me, Raging Rich.
And me, T.A. Shalana.
And today we are here with the last of our American guests here on the podcast.
Yep. Welcome to Caralyn Dreyer.
Hello.
Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, you did, actually. You did.
Right, I thought, have I got it right?
No, I'm impressed because either the first name is mispronounced or the last name or both. So, very good.
The research helps.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us today. I know we were meant to do this a little while ago and we had to unfortunately postpone, but yeah, great to be able to finally get around to it, Rich.
Yeah, it's been really good. Thank you, obviously, for being open to rearranging and chat with us. Really do appreciate it. Could you just start, please, Caralyn, by telling us a bit about yourself and introducing yourself to our listeners, please?
Absolutely. So, I am Caralyn Dreyer, and I am a mom. I am a mental health blogger. I also work as an online writing tutor. I have a master's degree in forensic psychology and a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I do pretty much absolutely nothing really related to either of those degrees. Not like directly, but like the research and all that stuff is, relevant.
Thank you for introducing yourself. I listened to your appearance on the When Not Yet Becomes Right Now podcast with Jennifer Ginty, a mental health podcast about the moments that spark change, where you talked about navigating identity and resilience after trauma. You were incredibly open in that discussion. How have you built the confidence and sort of coping strategies and resilience to be able to speak so openly about traumatic experiences you've been through?
You know what? It took time, definitely time. We're talking, over a decade. And I think I've always actually been pretty open with people in my personal life as far as the things that I've gone through, especially in dating relationships, because of some of the trauma I've survived, abusive relationships and things of that nature. Those severely impact your ability to build relationships again, and as far as like trust and, rebuilding your self-esteem. So I've always kind of been open in that aspect. Pretty much anyone in my life knows bits and pieces of my journey. Some people know more than others, but to actually do it on a public platform wasn't actually too challenging. One of the reasons it took me so long was because one of the relationships, which was with my son's father, was abusive, and I actually had to escape that relationship. So after that happened, I was very private. Like my Instagram account just went public last year. I didn't use my real name. I was the Care Bear. So I didn't even use my real name on there. Not that people wouldn't have known me, but it was just like my security blanket. And then due to like a course of events, I was like, you know what, it's time for me to share my story more so to help other people, because I wish when I was going through the stuff I was going through, there would have been more people around me that could relate. So I just kind of wanted to pay it forward in that way and just kind of suck it up and just get out there. Plus my son, I want to set a good example for him and let him know that it's okay to be yourself. It's okay to talk about those kind of messier parts of your life because it helps you, but then it also helps other people. So it may surprise you. I have really severe social anxiety, and it's actually like a sheer miracle that I even am out here doing podcasts and doing these mental health videos on social media, because I I really don't like socializing. I'm a hermit. I'm very introverted. When COVID happened and we had to be isolated, I was excited about it. I was like, yes, I have an excuse to not have to go out and socialize and talk to everybody. So a part of this process has really been me getting over my anxiety as well. So it's just all been a learning experience.
Does it become kind of like a bit of a therapy, actually, to some degree?
Yes. Yep.
Wow. I think that's quite inspiring, though, really, in terms of, overcoming that, to be able to then put that out as a sort of public thing and kind of try and help others.
You mentioned earlier on that you're a passionate advocate for mental health. Could you give us a little bit of insight sort of into your experiences with that journey and what sort of got you into the advocacy, please?
Yes, I would say I've struggled with my mental health for sure since, we'll say, like adolescence. I definitely, looking back, well, I've always had the anxiety aspect, but the depression aspect was so prevalent from maybe earlier than 12, but for sure from 12 all the way on to present time. And I didn't know I was depressed per se. Like, I knew I was sad, but I didn't really know what mental health was. To be perfectly honest with you, I equated mental health purely with mental illness. I did not really look at it as like there's daily maintenance that you do. You can have depressive symptoms and then 2 years later never have them again. Like, I just didn't know the complexity of it. So as I got older and started taking like psychology courses, I slowly kind of started to understand it, but I just remember in high school, there would be a lot of days where I would just be like sobbing, crying, and not actually like really knowing what it was. I kind of assumed like, oh, I'm just being hormonal, especially with girls. We get that stigma. If we're like super emotional during adolescence, it's our raging hormones and like we're being dramatic. So I just kind of chalked it up to like, I guess I'm a weirdo. I'm crying for no reason. And, you just keep pushing forward. Little did I know that my childhood and struggling with racial identity and being bullied, and I developed an eating disorder. I did not know that not really dealing with those things was causing me to have crying or anxiety or whatever the case may be. So throughout adulthood, I have struggled with the depression kind of severely. After I had my son, I had really bad postpartum depression, and that was the first time I was put on medication. I was on Prozac. I think it was like the generic version of that. And I remember feeling embarrassed because it's like, gosh, I have to take medication to deal with my day. But I did. That's exactly what I had to do. I didn't really like being on it because it was actually to the point where I felt nothing. Like, I'm pretty sure a pretty stressful or traumatic situation could have happened to me while I was on that medication. I probably would have had really little to no reaction because the medication was so strong. It was actually numbing me like a little too much. I'm grateful I was on it because my son was younger. I was working full time. I was a single mom. So it was helpful, but I realized how I was playing into the stigmas that are out there. And I was feeling shame with having to take the step of being on medication and not understanding that that's totally fine. And granted, there's millions of people out there who are in the same situation. So time progressed. About a year ago is when I started my mental health blog. I had wanted to start a blog a few years prior. My now ex-husband, that's like a whole other, it's like a whole other show. Basically, he had some narcissistic tendencies. So when I mentioned my blog, I was like, yeah, I'm going to start this blog or whatever. And he laughed. He laughed and was like, well, who told you you should do that? And I'm thinking, like, this is my husband basically crushing all my dreams. Like, it literally sucked all the life out of me when he said that. And I was so flabbergasted. I never really processed it at the moment, but it crushed my soul and I just didn't do it. Now, fast forward to last year, I had an opportunity come up where I could start my blog. And I was like, it's time for me. Who cares what he says? Like, and if nobody reads it, who cares? It's something I want to do. I have been inspired by other people that I know who share their mental health journeys, but I do notice there's not enough awareness out there for like the not so great parts of mental health struggles. Not that I don't know if there's any great part to the struggle, but for example, I've shared before that during postpartum depression, I was not brushing my teeth on a daily basis. I was not showering on a daily basis. And it was because I just literally did not have the energy, number one. And number two, I was not thinking enough of myself to care for myself, basically. I was not like waking up in the morning like, how gross can I be today? Let's not do these things and be gross. Like it's such a hard thing to explain to people, but depression paralyzes you. Now you're able to function most of the time. Some people can't. I was a high functioning person because I had a job and everything. But when you're alone and there's nobody around, you are just stuck. It's like walking through quicksand, but also having cement blocks on your feet. Like you're just trying to like trudge through life and you just can't seem to keep moving forward. So I felt it was so important for people to know that, yes, we have medication and therapy and let's meditate, let's journal, but let's also talk about the things that lead us to need to do those things. And it's so much more than depression is not sitting around and crying all day. Anxiety is not running around like a chicken with your head cut off. There's so many hidden symptoms that we have to talk about to just keep raising that awareness and breaking that stigma.
Oh, just because I said this is the mental health blog is called Darkness to Dialogue. Is that
Darkness to Dialogue, Living Well with Mental Illness.
I was just going to say, because you mentioned with the mental health that a lot of it's associated with mental illness rather than the sort of the looking after yourself. And I actually, where I used to work, went on a training session and the lady who ran it actually pointed out, I don't know if the term's used in the US, but over here in the UK, the term "you're mental" is used a lot. And certainly it used to be used as a negative thing. And the lady who was running the training said, mental health, the term health is in there. You wouldn't, with your physical health, say something that derogatory and kind of changing that narrative around it. And also when you mentioned with the blog, I mean, we've had it with the podcast, who'd want to listen to you guys. And we said, we'd be happy if 2 people listen to it. And I think that's the thing where obviously you've taken something that you've been through that's very traumatic and turned it into a positive and helping others with their experiences that they're going through, which is something very commendable. And I think, you're doing an absolutely fantastic job with.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so scary. Like I'm literally terrified every time I post a blog article because there's a lot of scrutiny out there surrounding misinformation in general, but specifically geared towards mental health. So I take like painstaking efforts. I try not to use too many statistics because a lot of times when you look into it, it's only for like a specific disorder or whatever. But I am always terrified that I'm going to get someone calling me out on social media like, yeah, this is a blog about misinformation and Caralyn Dreyer. Like, I promise you, I'm always so terrified, but I do it anyway. And, I'm only human. If I were to misinform someone, I actually would want to know about it so I don't keep perpetuating that. But I appreciate your kind words. And it's really been something that I'm extremely proud of for sure.
You got to consider the impact the blogs had on your own mental health or feedback from others?
Yes. Usually when I'm down in the dumps or just kind of having like a rough day, I blog. So in that aspect, it's been like a really good outlet. And I am receiving a lot of good feedback in terms of just how the material is relatable. And sometimes it just takes seeing or hearing, like someone else goes through that too, because we're all in our heads, whether we have good mental health or poor mental health. We're always in our heads. So we think a lot of things are maybe just individualized until we hear what other people have to say. And it's like, oh my gosh, there's other people that experience that. So that's a lot of the feedback that I get, is that it's very relatable. And that I'm very grateful for, because that was one of the main goals, was to produce relatable content, for sure.
That reminds me a bit of, we did an episode in season 2 with a lady called Mel from the Men Against Mountains movement. And she basically started, community there around, although it was as a woman, but she saw it was like a real issue in tackling of men's mental health, and how people then navigated and started to share those experiences and built then their own communities around things. So it just shows you, when people do share their story like you have, what benefit that can bring to other people. Shows the value in doing it. And obviously, again, ignoring, the people who often tell people not to do things. But I think that's one of my sort of reflections, really. I think I saw that you were adopted and grew up in what would be classed as predominantly a sort of Caucasian or white town, and someone biracial. How did those early experiences shape your life?
I have not really realized the magnitude of those experiences until here recently. And honestly, it's no wonder I developed a lot of the challenges or issues that I did. So I am adopted, as you just said. Now, I grew up in a family where adoption was actually prevalent. Like, my sister's adopted. We are not blood related, if you can follow me here. My adoptive mom was also adopted. And then I have 2 uncles that were adopted. So the adoption aspect wasn't the thing that I got caught up on. It was the skin color aspect of it. It was pretty brutal. I've shared before that in 4th grade, a girl told me that my skin was brown because I took a bath in mud. And so that was not a fun experience. I was called the N-word. To tell your listeners, I'm half African-American, half Korean. And you can tell the African-American part of me because I have darker skin. So I was called the N-word. I think it was 2nd grade. And then I have different features. I had bigger lips, which finally my face caught up. But as a kid, maybe not so much. So I was teased about my lips. I was called blubber lips. I had my teeth kind of stuck out. So I was called buck teeth. So childhood was good, but it was also very, very bad. And it's really no wonder that I developed an eating disorder. I just was so hyper-focused on my image because of all the teasing and some of the discrimination, that I just didn't grow up really feeling that great about myself. And then the social anxiety, when I was a child, I don't remember how old I was. So my adoptive father is white, Dutch. My last name is Dreyer, which is obviously wouldn't be my given name by heritage, because that's very Dutch. But I would go to the store with him alone, and I would wonder if people thought he kidnapped me. Because I'm like, how strange does this look in a predominantly white town? And you have, now granted, there was other minorities, but I always felt like people probably think he kidnapped me, because why would you have a white guy walking around with a little brown girl? That's what I thought as a kid. And even to this day, I think back, I shouldn't have had to think about stuff like that as a child. I mean, unfortunately I did, but it really blows my mind. And it just really made me struggle with my identity. When I got to college, it was like a repeat. So in college, I was not really accepted by the African American community because I was too white. So I'm thinking, first of all, Caucasian that I know of is not in my heritage. So I'm not really quite sure where that connection is coming from. But then because I spoke with proper grammar, which every race and ethnicity should use proper grammar, doesn't matter what language you speak, but they would be like, yeah, you talk like a white person. So when I got to college, it was essentially a repeat of my childhood, only with grown adults. So it was challenging. And I think now I'm starting to kind of come to grips with why a lot of these thoughts and feelings that I had about myself occurred. I do sometimes wonder, if people still look at my race as being an adult. I do wonder if that plays into things. I've not really had noticeable, really, discrimination. I've had a couple dating relationships where the guy's parents didn't like that it was like a interracial relationship. So I've had to deal with that before too. And it's just sad that, when are we going to get over this? I'm over it, but when is the rest of the world going to catch up? Like, who freaking cares? What's what? As long as someone's treating you with dignity and respect, who gives a rip, like, what their skin color is, what race they are, what language they speak? Like, who cares? Now, I get we have certain laws in place and things of that nature, but it's like, it's just, everybody needs to just stop acting like that and realize the damage that you're doing to people. I wish that my parents would have had a little more education about raising a biracial child. I think that would have been extremely helpful. I just kind of feel like I didn't have anybody that related to me. And so a lot of things I internalized, and they did come out later in adulthood in the form of, I don't know, probably making crazy decisions or whatever the case may be. They manifested into negative things, but it was a lot growing up. I'm glad to kind of be beyond that a little bit, but it's challenging. It can be challenging.
But I think people do often focus so much on difference, don't they? People really sort of hone in on characteristics of people of different things, and almost like that's wrong or something, different things. It's got brought out more and more now. So I don't know if you feel like things have changed in your life to some degree in that sense. Have things improved in society, perhaps from say 30 years ago?
Yes and no. Depending on which part of the world you're in these days, diversity is certainly celebrated. Where I live, diversity, it's good. I don't really stick out. I don't feel like I've dealt with discrimination. And again, maybe I'm like oblivious to it. Maybe people do discriminate against me and I don't really realize it. It's also sad, but I do think the fact that if you have certain credentials or a certain educational background, that people might treat you nicer, even though they maybe don't like that you're a different race. And that is also very messed up, because it shouldn't matter if I worked in a factory for the rest of my life and never went to college. It shouldn't make you think higher of me as a minority because I've achieved things. Anybody can achieve anything. It shouldn't matter what your skin color is. And I don't think that should make me more important than my other minority counterparts just because I've achieved different things. So to answer your question, I think things have changed, but we have a long, 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 long way to go. And I can say certainly I'm probably not going to live to be like 130. But I don't even think we're going to see that much change even in the next 50 years, sadly to say. I don't mean to sound pessimistic, but it's just because there's not enough people willing to bridge that divide. And like you said, realize there's a lot more that connects us than what separates us. And if we could just take the time to look beyond the superficial things, I think people would realize that.
Interesting you spoke sort of about the connection there with people, and it is something where you do kind of wonder when the idea of people saying because somebody's different and going in on them, is that something actually about them that they're deflecting?
Yeah.
Is it somebody who's not actually very confident in themselves and they think, oh, I can become more popular or gain more favor if I do this to somebody, and that's the kind of thing that needs to be eliminated. It needs to be, like you said, more things connect us. And I think one of the things that's happening over here with sort of mental health that's improving is the stigma on it's being removed. And a lot of that is through, and especially with men in the UK, it's a thing that's never really been spoken about. And what they're starting to do now is forming a lot more groups where you're finding people of different ethnicities, backgrounds, religions, people from different walks of life in the jobs that they do, and they're all going to these meetings and just talking and treating each other equally and supporting each other through things. And I think that's something that needs to become more prominent in society, really, across the board.
Yeah, I agree.
I think as well, we've had it where we've strangely, although and again, not by design with this podcast. I mean, obviously we started out as just sort of me and Rich doing a few episodes, and then we've had a lot of guests on, but we realized we'd actually had a lot more female guests than male guests, but just by people who'd offered to do it or different things, not by design. And then we were at a conference about podcasting and whatnot, learning some things, and we talked about that, and the reaction we got was almost like, oh, I don't really think that you should have done that. Like, as in, you shouldn't have women on and interview women about things that maybe affect women. And you're like, well, why? It's like, it's almost like, oh no, you two should just stick with talking to men and you're like, but hang on a second. The only way you kind of would get to understand people better is by talking to them and engaging with them. And as I say, in this season, obviously we've spoke to quite a few people in America who obviously we wouldn't have spoken to, and then other guests from the UK. But it's only by having those conversations that you learn more and perspectives. I was a little bit like, why should we only then sort of go, we only want male guests and be exclusive? I didn't understand that kind of. It was a woman giving me that feedback, and I'm like, oh. So I don't know. Sometimes people almost shut down and say, oh no, you should do that. I'll do this. And then that to me, that creates almost a divisive thing. Whereas conversation then opens things up. And we've had some great conversations with people on, physical health, mental health, and different topics by doing that. I mean, what sort of advice would you give to others that have been through trauma and those who are experiencing depression and anxiety?
Well, the first thing is you need to have a sense, even if it's a tiny sense, you need to have some self-awareness that something just isn't right. What prompted me to get on medication was me evaluating that something's not right here. Like, I'm struggling. My work quality was suffering. I'm during that time, I'm sure my coworkers were like, oh, is this lady going to ever get it together? Because I was a mess. But you have to have that self-awareness that something's not okay, but also that that's okay. I think we're so performance-based, and we've got to perform at our best all the time. We've always got to be at our best. Well, no, you don't always have to be at your best. So self-awareness is definitely important. And I think that you have to keep your mind open to what's going to work best in terms of treatment. Don't close yourself off to certain forms of treatment based on stigma or what people are going to think of you, because if that's going to be the best solution at that time, just go for it. As much as I didn't like being on the medication, and I'm not anymore, I'm extremely grateful that I was. But had I played into the stigmas and being so worried about what people were thinking, I honestly wouldn't have gotten on it, because just like anyone else, I do care what people think, and I didn't want people to think oh my gosh, she can't do her job or she's crazy, the crazy part that you get with mental health. So just be open-minded. I'm never one to tell people you have to go to therapy, you have to do this, you have to do that, because that stuff doesn't work for everybody. But just be open, have that self-awareness. And probably the biggest lesson that I've learned is that there's not necessarily going to be a final destination. So let's say you choose to get on medication, you're on it for the prescribed time, you get off, and you're good. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but unfortunately, you're going to encounter probably a future situation that might be considered a setback. That doesn't mean that every single thing that you've done up to that point completely gets undone and it doesn't count for anything. You just have a disruption or interruption in the process. I honestly thought there was something wrong with me, because I was like, okay, just last year, actually, I was writing in my journal, and I was like, how the F do people find out what their purpose is in middle age? How do they figure that stuff out? And you don't. That stuff just happens. And I thought because I wasn't getting to a point of never having anxiety, never having depression, always having it together, that I was like, oh, I guess I'm never going to be fixed. I'm not reaching that final milestone. Well, there is no final milestone. And if you've reached it, give me a call. Let me know how I can get there. So I think understanding that it's a process and you can't let those stopping points let you think that you're broken or that you can't be helped. Just do whatever you can do to keep going. And then it's okay to reach out for support. Now, there's probably a handful of people in my life that when I'm having mental health challenges, those are my go-to people because I know that they relate. They're not going to judge me. They're not going to give me advice if that's not what I want. They're going to just be there to be there. Look for those people. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't take advice, but a lot of times with mental health challenges, advice is not always the solution. A lot of times, the solution is merely letting someone know that they're not alone. That's all you have to say. You're not alone. I'm here for whatever you need. And just kind of leave it at that and let that person come to you. But putting that pressure on someone can really be counterproductive. So be engaged, have that self-awareness, seek out those supportive people, and understand that those lulls in the process, it does not mean it's time to give up and quit. It's just a pause and you just got to keep going.
I think you're completely right in that, Carolyn. As well with people, you mentioned they might have gone through the medication and then they think, okay, all set, and something happens, and then you think, actually, I did all this stuff, was it worth it? And like you say, you've got to think actually it was, and it got you to a place. Something's happened that may have set you back, but you can still get back to that place where you're happy and you're feeling better about yourself. And sort of with the healing journey for people and your own journey, how do you kind of measure the progress of that? What would you say helps you to know those steps that, okay, something's happened, it might have set you back, but you know to keep going through those positive steps to getting back on track?
So for me specifically, I'm an overthinker, and I'm extremely introspective, and that stems from perfectionism. So for me personally, I'm probably my own unlicensed therapist at times. So because I have that self-awareness, I am actually able to see that I've made progress. For example, just the other day, a few days ago, I had a really bad anxiety attack. And I noticed that it took me far less time to kind of move through that. And granted, it's not always going to be like that, but I noticed I was able to let myself sit with that discomfort, which is super important, is you got to force yourself to be uncomfortable, not to the point where you're going to harm yourself. But I've learned to sit with that anxiety because it is the worst physical feeling. I really can't even explain it. It's terrible. And instead of like getting up to be a busybody and keep myself busy, I sat with it for a few minutes. I identified like, why am I feeling like this? Did the breathing and all that stuff. And then I was okay. So I'm able to see noticeable differences because I have that self-awareness and recollection of where I've come from. And in the past, anxiety attacks can set me off for maybe a couple of weeks. Even when I had my son, I had attendance points at my job because I would be so like disabled, I wouldn't be able to leave my house. So I would call into work. Now, actually, that day I had the anxiety attack, I did like a live chat on the Clubhouse app, which is this networking app. And I had literally had an anxiety attack like hours before. Now, I don't know if that's the greatest thing to be proud of because I can function under those circumstances, but I noticed I was able to recover. I was able to recover from that instance a lot quicker. Being able to track progress is probably going to vary. Because if you see a therapist, that's a way to track progress because you go in there weekly, monthly, whatever. They tell you, yes, you're doing great with this, work on this. So it's going to be different for everyone, but you have to pay attention to yourself. I think at least in American culture, we're taught that if you think of yourself, you're conceited, you're arrogant, you think you're better than everyone. But no, there's a balance between thinking you're king of the world and ignoring yourself. And then in the middle, you're able to be like, okay, I am doing this. Congratulations to myself. I'm progressing. I'm doing great. Like, it's okay to think highly of yourself without being a complete jerk about it. You know what I mean? So there's always a happy medium, I think, and a balance in everything. So I guess just having self-awareness, and I guess if you have people in your life that can hold you accountable or help you keep track, that's a good way too.
Somebody I used to work with had quite an interesting thing. Was they said it at some points as well. It's always often good to take stock and reflect back as well, sometimes on how far you might have come from doing whatever it is of doing something, and how much you may have achieved or got through. And that's something that stuck with me over the last. It was a good few years ago that person mentioned it. But sometimes when you do things where you have particularly challenging, busy spells or whatever, is to take that step back sometimes and actually, because you do forget day to day, some of the the challenges and things that you actually get through. And if you actually stop and think, wow, look at that over the last few months, that it can be quite an inspiring thing to you as well when you realize what you can do and what you have done. I mean, obviously we've talked about challenging experiences, but what things sort of do you enjoy? What brings you sort of happiness and joy in your life?
Oh my goodness. I am the biggest nature girl ever. I love, even though I have allergies, it doesn't really make sense, but I love to be outdoors, bird watching, going for walks, taking pictures of snails. I took a video of a snail the other day because I don't know, like, how often we're so busy. How often literally do you see a tiny little snail scooching around? I don't know. I really love little moments like that because you wouldn't ever notice anything like that unless you were looking for it. So I think I intentionally look for little moments that I wouldn't otherwise experience if I wasn't just paying attention and being present. I like painting, just paint by numbers. I'm no artist over here. I follow the little numbers and the color thing. And then just hanging out with my son. He'll be 10 this year. He's a nature guy as well, so we spend time outside. Writing is something that I enjoy. But other than that, I'm kind of like reintroducing myself back into socializing. I've been isolating for the last probably like 8 years or so. There was a divorce in there. There was a bunch of other things too. So I literally left a conversation with my neighbor the other day and I went over in my head like, okay, I introduced myself. I said this. It's like I have to like remember like how to have conversations with people. Other than just quiet little family things, I'm not yet to the point where I like to go to the movies and do things of that nature. I'm like a little old lady shoved inside a 40-year-old body. Like my friends used to call me like the grandma of the group because I'm always like, oh, you guys, you shouldn't be doing that. Or you guys, we got to watch the time. Like I'm content at home under my blanket watching episodes of Seinfeld, which is my favorite show ever. Do you guys watch Seinfeld ever?
Yeah,
that is the best show.
My wife absolutely loves it. She often still plays some of the reruns now. So yeah, I'm quite familiar with Seinfeld.
That is, look, I have seen every season and episode more than 10 times. That's actually been a go-to during my times of like depression. I have like a lineup of shows that depending on what I'm going through, I watch the same shows every year for the last, oh gosh, this sounds like so sad, but I think for at least the last 5 years. So if I'm watching a certain Downton Abbey, oh my gosh, I freaking love that show. I have seen, same thing as Seinfeld, I have seen every season and episode. I didn't watch the movies, but I've seen that show well over probably 10 times.
You'll have seen it more than us. I don't think Rich or I are Downton Abbey.
Oh, I love that show.
I know it's a UK thing, but it's probably not mine or your thing, Downton Abbey. Rich.
Y'all have the best television ever. I am telling you. It is so much better than American television. Seriously, it is.
I don't know actually, because we had something about television, but there's some of my favorite TV has been American, weirdly drama wise.
I think some great drama. I think for me the problem with American TV that I've kind of been hit by in the past is they start making a show and then while they're still making it, it airs on TV. And then if it's not getting the viewers, they'll just cancel it and they might steal. And they don't really do that here in the UK. It's sort of, there's much shorter seasons. I mean, we never even used to call them seasons, did we? It was always a series. So
Right.
in America, obviously, a series is the whole thing. Whereas over here, it'd be, oh, it's series one of that, series two. Whereas now it has become seasons and then the whole thing is the series. But we kind of have much shorter seasons of shows with less episodes. And I think that probably helps. But
Yeah.
also, they tend never to just go, oh, we're going to stop that halfway through. It'll be, we've filmed it, it's out, and then see how it does. If it does well, do another one, and they'll kind of do it like that. And I think that's sort of the difference.
Yeah.
It's less patient. In America, they just go, this isn't working. Just
Yes, that's so true. No, that is so true.
But yeah, if there was one thing you could change or influence in society, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good one. You know what? I think I just wish everyone would just keep it real and be more honest and genuine. I think that I'm noticing the older I get, the more I just appreciate. If you don't like me, I would just rather just tell me you don't like me. I'm 43, I'm 4'11", first of all, so I'm probably not going to do much to you given my size, but I just wish people would be honest. Like the other day, I came home and I had something like some food in my tooth, and I had literally just had conversations with people, and I'm like, why did they just tell me I had food in my teeth? It's because they probably felt uncomfortable saying that, but I'm the girl. You got food in your teeth, something on your face. I'm not going to call you out in front of everybody, but I'm going to tell you, because it's I want someone to tell me that. It's just be honest. I'm noticing as I'm branching out in this content creation in my blog, people want to, pretend that they want to be friends with you, but they really just want to know who you know or want to get into business. Just say that. I don't have time to have these little minimal, these conversations that don't matter. Just freaking be honest. I just wish people would be more honest. I do.
I think that's a very, very good point. And often people don't like honesty, but there's a lot to be said for it sometimes. Sometimes it's better if people are honest and upfront. But I've just realized something. So you've just said that you're 43, and we're both also 43. And I've just realized this episode, when it goes out, will be our 43rd episode, which is a very strange coincidence. I've just realized that because it'll be episode 9 of season 4 is actually our 43rd episode. It's this episode is Everything's 43. That's what we're going to have to call it.
Yeah, it was meant to be. That's so crazy.
Yeah. So, because I count in my head how many episodes we've done and what's going out and stuff. So,
yeah.
Caralyn, I don't know if you've seen this trend that's going on social media at the moment, but it's something that I don't know if it's been a global thing or just a UK thing, but there's where people basically post that they met their younger self for a coffee and they're sort of talking to them about things that they're probably worrying about or sort of giving them advice. If you could do that, if you could talk to your younger self, what would you say to her?
I would tell her that you can do it, which sounds so basic, but like I've said, struggled with self-esteem since childhood. I lived in the shadow of my siblings. They're all amazing people. This is not dissing them, but they were in these honor choirs. They were in the National Honor Society on the honor roll. They were taking college classes in high school, doing all these things. All the teachers knew them. So I was known as their sibling. And so that kind of made me think I was less than because I wasn't doing those same things. And I had people around me all the time. My grandfather repeatedly would tell me, you can do it. I believe in you. You can achieve these things. But I didn't believe it. I felt well, they're just telling me that because they have to. I'm their family. They have to tell me that stuff. So I would tell her, you really can do it. You can do it because I've gone on to achieve so many things that I never thought that I would have, but it's because I told myself, you can do this. It would just be that simple as believe what these people are telling you. You really have it in you to achieve whatever you want.
Fantastic, thank you.
And what's next for Caralyn?
Well, I have a project I'm working on, which I'm not going to say on here, but it's going to be coming out in August. So I'm excited about that. Also, my blog is growing and I will be debuting a new feature on there because I also should have mentioned that in my spare time, if you guys ever need a background check on somebody, like an unofficial one, I'm your girl. Like, I love to investigate stuff. I was supposed to work with a PR agent last year and some shady things went on and I investigated her. Like, it's easy. Googled a bunch of stuff and I found stuff that led me to believe I should not be going into business with this person. I wasn't wrong either. But anyway, to speak to that, the next feature on my blog is going to be like an investigative feature where I want to dive into like, I hate to say it, the darker side of mental health, but you have people who've experienced bad experiences with therapists or some of like the marginalization and some of the lesser served population, just things of that nature. So that feature will be coming out at the end of the month and it'll differ from the mental health in the news in that it's going to be like I try to be very academic and appropriate with my other posts. I'm not going to be like cursing in this one, but it's just going to be more real and raw. Like, look, you're not always going to have a good experience with a therapist, or look, this is what's really going on behind the scenes. So I'm really excited about that. So there's definitely more to come.
Just wondering, for the benefit of our listeners, if anyone out there wants to find anything more out about your blog or anything like that, where can listeners find you online?
All right. So I am on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Twitter, TikTok, Clapper, and that's it. So I'm pretty much on all the platforms. And it's my name, Caralyn Dreyer, in some sort of format. I think some of the platforms is the Caralyn Dreyer. And then my mental health blog, you can find at carolyndreyer.blogspot.com. And honestly, I mean this without sounding like I have a big head, but literally if you Google my name, you'll be able to find like all of my platforms. I have some published articles that you can find too, but I have a personal website. However, it's one of those like ones that you create yourself. So the actual website name is like a bunch of weird letters and stuff at the beginning. So I'm not even going to begin to try to recite what that is, but you can find the link to my website on most of my platforms.
That's fantastic. Thank you. We'll link to all of that as well. We'll link everything up on the show notes and on the description for the episode as well. So hopefully people will click through and start following you on there as well.
And we have a tradition on the podcast, do we not, Rich? When we have guests on, we offer essentially the last word to the guest as a reflection of their episode or anything that they would like to say. So if you want to close out your episode.
Well, I think I would just like to leave with reminding everybody that no matter where you come from or where you're at in life, especially as it concerns your mental health, you're definitely not alone. There's so many of us out here who understand the struggles, the challenges, the messy parts. So please just know, like in those moments where you feel like nobody understands you or nobody gets you, that's most definitely the biggest lie in the world. And also just that everybody remembers that they're important and they matter.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. And thank you for joining us here today. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. One more middle-aged podcast in your life?
Of course you do. Follow us on social media for behind-the-scenes stuff, extra larks, and all our latest updates.
We're on Instagram and Threads at Middle-aged Bodcast.
Facebook's easier. Just head to facebook.com/middle-aged podcast.
If you're still hanging on to Twitter or X or whatever it's called now, we're at Middle-aged Bodcast.
And if you're on Blue Sky, it's at middleagedpodcast.bsky.social.
Or you can swing by our website, middleagedbodcast.co.uk.
Give us a follow and stay in the loop.
Cheers for listening.